we are not alone.
These are supposed to be some of the most verified images of giants.
People who do meditation for 60 days will lengthen their telomeres.
Soon we'll get results, and we'll let you know right here on Beyond Belief.
Things seem to be changing in the field of ufology.
It's going to be a bumpy ride.
That's priceless.
Isn't that amazing?
Tesla wanted free energy, and look what happened to him.
Plenty of evidence to show that they're real. The real question is how and why.
There were Egyptian hieroglyphs out in the outback of Australia.
In Australia. What are the possibilities? Mars was inhabited, and these were built. We almost can't duplicate today.
These are amazing topics.
What if there was something like at Area 51 deep underwater?
They were killed by some animal.
Believe me, we're just getting started. I'm George Norrie, and we here at Gaia are committed to revealing the truth.
As I mentioned, psychic and mentalist Uri Geller has stepped in to pull the world back from the brink of a World War III, possibly, with a truly mind-bending warning to Russian President Vladimir Putin. In a moment, we go live to Israel to talk with Uri Geller about that and also extraterrestrials next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Uri Geller is the world's most investigated and celebrated mystifier. He is famous around the planet for his mind-bending psychic powers and has led a very unique life shrouded in debate, controversy, mystery. Uri has been studied by scientists who worked with Albert Einstein, worked with the FBI and CIA. He's an accomplished author as well. And here he is, one of our favorite guests, back on Coast to Coast, Uri Geller. Hello, Mr. Geller. Welcome back.
Hey, George. Hi. Thank you very much for inviting me onto your show. Geographically, I would like to tell you all where I am. I'm in a city in southern Israel called Eilat, and that is right on the Red Sea. The Red Sea, which is actually, it's red because of the red reed that kind of floats on its waters. Now, going back to biblical times, you all remember the crossing of the Red Sea by Moses.
That's right.
The crossing of the Red Sea forms an important episode in the biblical narrative of the Exodus. It basically tells of the escape of the Israelites led by Moses from the pursuing Egyptians. This is actually incredible because there are some people believe that UFOs were involved in the parting of the Red Sea. And, this is all recounted in the book of Exodus. And Moses, as you remember, Charles Heston in the famous movie, he holds out the staff and God parts the waters of the Yam Suf. Yam Suf in Hebrew is the Red Sea, the red reed. It's quite fascinating. So I'm looking out of my hotel window, and I'm looking at the Red Sea, and I'm sending you all over the world who are listening to your program, George, immense positive energy from the Red Sea.
Didn't they find a chariot there, Uri, years ago, a chariot in the water that could have been an Egyptian chariot?
They claim that they found lots of very unusual archaeological finds. I totally believe in the story. I believe that the Bible is riddled with truth, and once again, it's very hard to decipher whether aliens helped the Israelites escape from Egypt. Today, I say yes, no doubt. Because you see, throughout my career, George, I've seen things that basically blew my mind. I know that aliens exist. I've seen them with my very own eyes. And it goes back almost 55 years ago when when Mossad, I was working for Mossad at that time. Mossad, because there was no internet then, there were no iPhones. Mossad did not have the tools to test my powers. They knew I was bringing them good information, like a remote viewer does, but they didn't know how, and they wanted to know how. So they asked the CIA to investigate me, and the CIA asked Captain Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut that was the sixth man to walk on the moon with Apollo 14 mission. They asked him to convince me to leave Israel. So, wow, I get a letter from Mitchell, signed the photograph. I'm freaking out. I can't believe that an astronaut is contacting me and trying to tell me, look, Uri, we need to test you. I didn't need convincing, George. I jumped on a plane and flew to Palo Alto, California, where some physicists were waiting for me, Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, and straight to Stanford Research Institute, where they tested me, and this was all financed by the CIA.
I remember that great story you told us once, Uri, about you and Edgar Mitchell. He had a NASA tie clasp that he had lost, and you were having some ice cream with him at lunch, and it was in your ice cream and in your mouth. Somehow it got there, and you found it. Remember that one?
When you say somehow, what I deduce from that episode is that it simply materialized. Materializations today are proved by science, by quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement. There's no doubt that things can appear and disappear from point A to point B, but we're talking about the early 70s when this occurred. Ed, I'll never forget his face. He looked at the tie pin, at the tie clasp, and his face ashened. He couldn't believe what he was looking at because he lost that tie pin years and years ago on a beach in Florida. Wow. And it appears in my ice cream.
That's incredible.
Then there are lots of other stories involved when the CIA tested me, and they came out with an incredible endorsement. What they said, and that you can actually find it on the CIA's website, they said, as a result of Geller's success in this experimental period, we consider that he has demonstrated his paranormal perceptual ability in a convincing and unambiguous manner. CIA. I was only 27, and to get this type of an endorsement from one of the largest espionage community in the world was just, wow, mind-blowing. Then I was taken to the Lawrence Livermore radiation labs. And to those who do not know, they build nuclear bombs there.
Yep.
And they basically wanted to test my abilities to see if my mind can trigger a nuclear weapon. And that's when, inside those laboratories, freaky things started happening. And I can only connect them to an alien observation. This goes so deep into the fact that there are UFOs and alien forces are watching us. They are monitoring us. They basically do not want our planet to be destroyed by nuclear bombs. That's what's going on here.
And you have a very stern warning for Vladimir Putin, Uri. Tell us what you did.
Well, I'm being asked constantly by different sources, which I cannot name, to help them in the fight, in trying to keep Putin away from nuclear bombs, from pressing the red button. And I came up with this warning letter, an open letter, where I said your nukes, your nuclear weapons, are no match for my mind power. And I basically warned Vladimir Putin that if he will use nuclear bombs, I will use every last molecule in my mind power, to prevent any Russian nuclear attack. Now, I know this sounds very far out and almost taken out of a science fiction movie, but I was in this letter urging the Russian president to ditch any plans to launch a nuclear strike. Then at that time, there were theories that he's going to launch a nuclear strike on naval bases in Scotland, close to my Lamb Island. I own. We will talk about, if you will allow me, my mysterious Lamb Island in Scotland. And this was an open letter, and I'm issuing this statement. That's what I said, as a serious warning to you. I addressed him directly, and I said, if you resort to the use of nuclear weapons, your plans and your missiles will backfire on you.
You were going to divert the missiles, weren't you, with your mind power?
Yes. I said I will use every last molecule of my mind power to prevent you from launching a nuclear attack. Of course, I asked for help. I needed support. This is a mammoth task of preventing a nuclear holocaust. And I'm calling on, these were my words, I'm calling on all the wonderful, peace-loving people of the world to join me. You know, I'm on Twitter. My Twitter is there, Uri Geller. My Instagram is there, Uri Geller. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. So I have quite a few following. One of my last posting had 4 million views.
Wow.
So I was asking through my social media, please stop what you're doing right now and just take 5 seconds out of the day to visualize. This is me asking my followers to visualize a radiant, energetic force field, almost like a dazzling golden shield in the sky that will deflect and turn back any nuclear warheads that Putin attempts to display.
He has sent a letter to Vladimir Putin warning Putin that if he uses nukes in this Ukrainian situation, where Vladimir Putin's people have threatened that they're going to use nukes also throughout the campaign against other countries, that he is going to use his mental mind power to turn things around west of the Rockies. Hello there, you there?
Yes.
What's your name?
Larry.
Where are you calling from, Larry? You're on the air.
Tacoma, Washington.
It's a great spot. What's on your mind?
We have tried powers of intention from coast to coast before.
Yes, we have.
And worked rather well, I thought, from what I heard. And could we not assist Irvi Gerler with a power of intention thought from everyone across the United States?
That's not a bad idea. Sometimes we've done it under controlled circumstances. Sometimes we have not. But something's got to be done, because I'm concerned that something's going to break through and it's going to be a disaster. So we've got to be careful. Thanks for the call. Next up, we've got Bill in Michigan. Welcome to the show. Hey, Bill.
Hey, this is Bill calling from Munger, Michigan.
Yes, sir.
I had a quick one for you. Hey, back in, I think it was around 2004, we had that big blackout from, I think, Michigan all the way to New York.
Yep.
About a year before that, Al Bielek was on the radio, and he said right about that time there was going to be a major disruption, and he was predicting like a year ahead, and we had that blackout, I think, almost on that exact same date. So I don't know if anybody ever caught on to that or not, and I haven't heard anything about it on your show. So
Bielik was one of a kind. He's not with us anymore, as you know.
Yeah, rest in peace.
He passed on. What did you think of that Philadelphia experiment that he was part of?
I thought it was very interesting. To me, for a little bit there, I thought he was kind of like pulling my leg, but once that blackout hit, it kind of all went home, kind of like it was real. So,
he was one of, and he had his brother Duncan Cameron, who was also part of that experiment. Next up, we got Tom in Riverside, California, west of the Rockies. Hey, Tom.
Welcome to the show. Yeah.
You're up. Turn down your radio and come on back.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You got me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay. I want the song "My Way" if you sing. Okay. And then the other thing is I'm kind of on the Russia thing. I just have to say I'm on Russia's side. You know, we took down Russia. Reagan took him down. I'm a fan of Reagan, but still, you know, they took down Russia. Russia was a proud country. And then you're talking about going against Russia. You know, Russia liberated a lot of the Jews in those concentration camps in World War II. And they fought hard. And they moved all their equipment to Siberia over a lake, a frozen lake, laying train tracks across that lake to fight the Germans. They knew they were coming, and they got ready for them. So I got a lot of respect for the Russians, and I got a lot of respect for Putin. And if he's a bad guy, hey, just go and look at the news reels from Vietnam when that girl's running naked from napalm. What we did to Vietnam.
Well, Vietnam was a disaster, Tom.
We're not the good guys all the time.
No, nobody is in a war, that's for sure. And Vietnam was a disaster beyond anything you can imagine. East of the Rockies, welcome to the program. Let's go to Dan in San Antonio, Texas. Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate it. God bless you all. Listen, I want to ask you, I'm sorry, I'm in San Antonio, Texas, and I don't know if you're having problems with the communication, but I don't know what happened to Yuri. Have you ever asked him if is he in a compromising position because of these things about Putin and stuff?
That was going to be one of my next questions, and he's disappeared. I hope he's okay.
Well, that's what I mean, because, you know, in other words, I think about you and Trump and everybody, like, do y'all have enough security? Like, is that the question right there? Because a lot of people, they're coming after us right now.
He's in a hotel somewhere in Israel, but I don't know what his security situation is or anything like that. But you send a letter like that to Putin, who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, because, see, remember Trump, at one point in time, he pointed out that he could take out somebody from a distance and that they wouldn't even know what happened to him, you know? Yep.
And supposedly something happened to those people who were mercenaries in other parts of the world, and he took them out, and they didn't never know what happened to them, you know? So if that can happen like that, well, Yuri's in danger, right? You know?
Well, let's hope not. We'll keep trying to get him just to see what's going on with him, but it was a very strange thing. This happens a lot when you have some controversial guest on. Time and time again. It really has. And you folks all heard it. We tried. Let's go next to Steve in Albany, New York. Hey, Stephen, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, George? It's Steve, the taxi driver.
Yes, sir. How have you been?
Couldn't be better. Things are going really well for me. Just bought a Batmobile, 2010 black Cadillac CTS 4, and couldn't be happier. I wanted to tell you that I was delivering Chinese food again, and I was driving across the State University of New York campus to make a delivery. I was stopped by the police, and the cop walks up to me, and he goes, "Hi, Steve, how you doing?" I'm sitting there, and I didn't recognize him immediately. I was too shocked that he called me by my name. I hadn't been up there in a while. And he just said, "Hell no, you've been up here all the time. We all know who you are." And he says, Steve, you got to stop calling in Coast to Coast AM. And I was told by the police not to call Coast. And I go, why? He goes, because you're taking too much time and we've got to hear the weirdos. And I looked at him and with a very straight face and said, I am one of those weirdos.
I love it.
He cracked up. Now, I wanted to talk to Yuri because I was on Facebook.
I'm going to put you on hold because we may have him back. Let's go check in. Uri, you back with us?
Yes, I'm back with you. I wouldn't be surprised if this is alien intervention here.
Or something. We thought the Putin boys got you.
Yeah, I don't know if this happens to you often. It doesn't happen to me. So I just want to finish this warning letter, an open letter that I wrote Putin and to all my followers on my social media. I continued in my warning to him, telling Putin that as well as harnessing this immense energy of all our combined mind power, there are also, and this is important, there are also forces far, far greater than you can imagine that I'm sure will intervene to prevent you from starting a nuclear war. And I continue telling Putin that they are watching and waiting, and they will stop. I actually wrote capitalized, stop you. So I told Putin to not contemplate this fair course of action. Please take heed. If you proceed with this, it is Russia and its people who will suffer the most. And I went on saying that your mission control computers will crash, your navigation systems will fail, and your missiles will malfunction. And I totally believe in that. And I warned him. I told him, you have been warned. And, open letter, and no doubt Putin, I know it from inside information, Putin had my warning letter on his table in the Kremlin.
I was going to say, did you get any feedback from him or any of his cronies?
Yes, not directly from him, but certain people who, are in the echelons of oligarchs who live in Israel and so forth. I know that he read my warning letter to him. You know that in Israel is a very powerful, first of all, there's no doubt we are talking about the Holy Land where Jesus Christ walked, where Muhammad the Prophet came down from the heavens. This is an incredible power point on earth. And I'm not surprised that people, and let me remind you who Chaim Eshed is. Did you speak in the past about the author, about the space security chief in Israel called Chaim Eshed?
Yes.
And you have. What was your last kind of verdict about Chaim Eshed?
He seemed, now he's never been on the show, but we talked about the stories that were breaking from him, and he seemed very credible. Did you get that same feeling?
Of course. I mean, let's face it, he was the chief security boss of all our space program. I mean, it's just unbelievable because he was a former Israeli space chief. And he said that aliens exist and Donald Trump knows about it. I'm sure that also Obama knows about it. And he claimed that a galactic federation has been waiting for humans to reach a stage where we will understand. Wow. And this comes from Israel. Unbelievable.
Truly. And I want to talk with you about Wernher von Braun. What did he tell you? Our great rocket who we got from the Germans.
Yeah, the Wernher von Braun story, again, is mind-blowing. I mean, we're discussing here people who, let me just explain all our listeners who Dr. Wernher von Braun was. But I have to backtrack a little because When I went...
and we've got a break coming up, Uri, in about a minute and a half. Go ahead.
Okay, during the minute and a half, let's prepare everyone for Wernher von Braun. I was, again, asked by Captain Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut who was 6 months on the moon, to come and meet him, and he would take me to the CIA tests at Palo Alto at Stanford Research Institute. After all the tests and the endorsements I got from the CIA, Ed Mitchell approaches me and he says to me, Uri, there is someone very important in NASA that wants to meet you. I said, fine, who is it? He says, it's Dr. Wernher von Braun. I said, what? Dr. Wernher von Braun was a Nazi. I mean, I have photographs of Dr. Wernher von Braun surrounded with Gestapo officers. So we will pick up after the commercial break, and I will tell you what exactly he told me and what exactly he showed me, because that's when I fainted. I've seen... We will speak when we come back, okay?
You got a deal. Stay right there, Uri. We'll come back and get you in a moment. Plus, we'll open up the phone lines for people who want an opportunity to talk with you in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Wernher von Braun, working with thousands of other great dedicated workers, helped get us to the moon. He had the idea of rocketry, and he knew how to do it. He also talked with Uri Geller, showed Uri Geller around. But what did he show him about ETs? Uri's back with us in a moment on Coast to Coast AM, and we'll also take your calls this hour. And welcome back to Coast. George Noory with you, along with psychic and mentalist Uri Geller. Uri, back to Wernher von Braun. He must have shown you some serious things about ETs, huh?
Yes, absolutely. But before we go into that, if you will allow me, George, I would like to mention my website, which is urigeller.com.
And we have that linked up, by the way. We have that linked up at our website.
Yeah, great. And after Wernher von Braun, we'll speak about my mysterious Lamb Island, which I bought 13 years ago in Scotland, because there are ties to UFOs on my island.
Sure.
And all of our listeners can become citizens of my island, and we'll talk about it. It's all in the name of charity. Money goes to sick children, to a charity called Save a Child's Heart. We already saved over 6,500 kids with open-heart surgery. Believe it or not, half of them are Palestinians. Okay, let's go back to Wernher von Braun. So Mitchell asks me to meet this important scientist called Wernher von Braun, who basically put the Americans on the moon. And I say to him, you know, he's a Nazi. I'm Israeli. I'm Jewish. Half of my family were murdered by Nazis. But I could not contain my curiosity. And I said to him, okay, let's go and meet Wernher von Braun. I had then a small Minox German spy camera, which I got from the CIA because I did some work for the CIA in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So I give that camera to my brother-in-law, Shippy, and I tell him, Shippy, listen, the minute we enter Wernher von Braun's office, you got to snap a photo because nobody will believe me. So we get to the secret NASA base, straight to Wernher von Braun's office. Shippy takes a photo. These photographs are on my website, on urigeller.com. And Wernher von Braun, the first thing he wants me to bend his wedding ring with the power of my mind, and without touching it. So I do that. I bend his ring. And then he says to me, okay, Uri, now come with me. And he takes me into his personal office. Now listen, in the office stands a safe. He bends down. Wernher von Braun opens the safe, and inside I see a piece of metal, maybe 12 and a half, maximum 13 inches in length. I've never seen such a color. It was pearly. It looked like it's breathing. He pulls a piece of metal out of his safe, and it's not heavy because he's just pulling it out and holding it in his hand. And he says to me, Uri, put your hand on this piece of metal. Tell me what you feel. I place my hand on the piece of metal, and I immediately tell him, Wernher, this is not from here. And he immediately answers me, you're right. This is a piece of a UFO that crashed on our planet. What?
Wow.
I freak out because, you know, George, when I was 6, 7, 8-year-old, here in Tel Aviv, I used to sneak into movies about aliens, and UFOs. I always believed in them, but hearing it from the mouth of Wernher von Braun, NASA scientist, doctor. But wait, hold on, this is not the end. And then he says to me, okay, come follow me. And he takes me out to the car park. I hit Shippy, my brother-in-law, with my elbow, take a picture. So Shippy snaps a picture of me and Wernher von Braun standing next to his limo with a driver, and he says to me, sit next to me. I sit in next to Wernher von Braun. He gives an order to his driver to drive deep into the center of the NASA base. We arrive to a concrete building. There's no name, nothing on it. To the best of my recollection, there was a soldier standing in the door. Wernher von Braun leads me 3 flights down. We descend into the belly of this concrete building. And then in the corridor, there were hanging on hooks Antarctica coats. You know, those warm coats that you wear when you go on an expedition to Antarctica?
Those parkas, yeah.
Parka, he says, put one on. And he puts one on. And then, George, he leads me around the corner to a huge metal door. Above the door, clearly written out, refrigerators. He opens the door.
Here we go.
And I faint. And this is where the red line comes in, because there are certain areas that I cannot talk about. But I think all of our listeners know what I've seen with my own eyes inside those refrigerator rooms. There was a vast, huge refrigerator room. So, I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. So, unless I was hypnotized or I was drugged, I wasn't hypnotized and I wasn't drugged. I've seen what. Now, Ed Mitchell, on a few occasions, told me that these aliens exist and we've got the body.
Yeah, he told me that too, Uri. He was a staunch believer in it.
Yes, and also just to validate this story more, June Crane, who worked with Wernher von Braun, she held that piece of metal, and also Carol Sue Rosin, who was Wernher von Braun's spokeswoman. Unbelievable. So now that the Pentagon is releasing footage from their pilots, and you can hear the pilots scream in the cockpit, oh my God, what is that? And you see these objects flying in speeds that we do not have that sophistication, we do not have that technology that to move the velocity of these flying objects. These UFOs are so fast, we don't have that technology. And you can hear the pilot scream in the cockpit. It's been caught on radar, like you say in your commercials. This is not a myth anymore. This is solid evidence. UFOs are visiting us. And I've known about this over 55 years ago when I met Dr. Puharich, who came to test me in Israel, who was a good friend of Andrea Puharich. I would like to speak about my Lamb Island, but do you have any other questions in this arena?
When I first met you back in 1996 in St. Louis, remember you were at the Jewish Community Center?
Yes.
You seemed reluctant at that time to talk about UFOs and extraterrestrials. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. I hid the fact. When that book came out in 1973-74, called Uri, by Andrea Puharich, who was a scientist, is a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
He invented the mask, the oxygen mask for fighter pilots. When he wrote that book, and by the way, let me tell you something that no one knows. It was Jacqueline Kennedy who pushed the book through. I met Jacqueline on a few occasions in her New York apartment on Central Park, and she knew the head of Doubleday. She knew the heads of some big publishing companies in New York, and she believed in Andrea's story. And Andrea's story in the book Uri, which is actually available to read free of charge on my website, you just scroll down to books. There are also documentaries about called The Secret Life of Uri Geller by the BBC. as she pushed the book through, the book was published, and Andrea, I mean, I'm controversial. You know, I've been controversial all my life. But for Andrea to come out writing a book that we have seen UFOs, and we're talking about 1969, 1917, the Sinai Desert, was outrageous for a scientist to declare that. He was booed in seminars. I mean, this was immensely controversial. So, hey, my thing with UFOs and aliens go back, you know, since I was 5 years old when I had an encounter in an Arabic garden here in Tel Aviv.
There were rumors that the UFOs gave you the power that you had for bending spoons and things like that.
You know, I wouldn't call it rumors. I was hounded by skeptics throughout the years. I'll never forget my Johnny Carson show.
Oh, 1973, wasn't it?
The what? I didn't hear that.
1973, Johnny Carson.
Yeah,
right?
I was. Yes, 30 million people watching, and I was humiliated by Johnny Carson. Things didn't work out. It was a setup. It was a trap. I thought, and Johnny, you know, when I bent a spoon in the hands of Ricardo Montalban, the actor, that wasn't enough for Johnny Carson. He was kind of smoking under the table. And I thought, that is, my career is destroyed. Uri Geller, go back to your hotel in Los Angeles, pack up and fly back to Israel. You're finished. I mean, failing on Johnny Carson or not succeeding was embarrassing and humiliating. Now, listen, I went back to the hotel. I was devastated. I fell on the bed, and I fell asleep. The next morning, the phone rings, and the operator tells me, Mr. Geller, I have a Merv Griffin on the line for you.
They wanted you on.
Yeah, I said, I want you on my show. I saw you on Johnny Carson. That's when I realized that all controversy is good for me. Skeptics actually created my career. They created the debate, the mystery, and the enigma. But going back to aliens and UFOs, they're visiting us. They're trying to protect our planet. And in a nutshell, you know, maybe they're even walking among us.
Tell me about this island, then we'll take calls for the rest of the hour.
Okay, my island is amazing. I have, I was in Japan and I read the Times, and I read that there was an island for sale in Scotland, right next to Edinburgh, in a place called North Berwick.
Mm-hmm.
It was very inexpensive. And, you know, I had this James Bondy mind to own an island, so I bought the island, and then I get a phone call from no other than Mohammed Al-Fayed. Mohammed Al-Fayed, just to put you in the picture, guys, he was a billionaire. He's an Egyptian billionaire. He's 93 now. And his tragedy was that his son, Dodi, died with Princess Diana in Paris.
He owned he owned a big store, didn't he?
Yeah, he owned Harrods in London.
Yeah.
And he tells me, Uri, I heard that you bought Lamb Island. I have to tell you something. I'm going to send you a book that was written 500 years ago called the Scotichronicon. It was written by a Scottish abbot called Walter of Inchcombe. And in that book, unbelievable, but the story is that 3,500 years ago, Queen Scotta, who was one of the daughters of one of the pharaohs, she sailed to northern Europe, moored outside my island, and buried she instructed the soldiers to bury Egyptian treasure. Now, beside that, when Robert Louis Stevenson, if you all remember, who wrote the literally classic Treasure Island, he lived opposite my island in North Berwick. My island, in another island called Fidra, one of the string of three rocky outcrops in the Firth of Forth of Scotland, that inspired, believe it or not, Robert Louis Stevenson to write Treasure Island. And then there were all kinds of reports that there are UFOs over my island. Now, 4 months ago, I turned my island into a country, into a micronation. I have a constitution, I have a flag, I have an anthem. Believe it or not, I have a football team. All of you can become citizens of my Lamb Island simply get on my website, urigeller.com. It'll cost you $1 to become a citizen. The $1 goes to a charity that I mentioned before, Save a Child's Heart. And we saved over 6,500 children with open heart surgery. That's where the money goes. And you become a citizen of Lamb Island. So that's the story of my amazing Lamb Island in Scotland.
Did you have a little house there or anything?
No, you cannot live on the island because it is a bird sanctuary. When I bought Lamb Island, I became the automatic owner of 150,000 seagulls and 50,000 puffins. They actually nest on Lamb Island. Now, it's a UFO hotspot, no doubt. There are people who live on North Berwick, right opposite my island, that tell me, Uri Geller, we see often UFOs hovering over Lamb Island. And recently on my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, which is called the Uri Geller, that's my Twitter, I posted a photograph of a British destroyer who was patrolling around my Lamb Island because there were reports that a UFO splashed into the water right next to my Lamb Island. Now, you just Google it. These are not stories that I'm inventing. Go to Twitter and you'll find that picture. So, yes, there are probably, and I assume that this is true, that aliens also have underwater bases. You know how many bona fide videos there are of these objects flying in tremendous speed, splashing into the sea, and disappearing. Come on, what on earth is that? No doubt again, aliens exist, they visit us, probably they walk among us, and they are protecting our beautiful planet.
Let's take some calls. We'll take a break and come back and wrap up with final call. Steve in Albany, New York, our cab driver. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, Uri. Hey, Baruch Hashem first.
Thank you, Stephen.
I'm one of your Facebook friends, and I sent you a picture of a fork I bent with my fingers. I wanted to clarify something. I have been doing this for a while. Started out with a key when I was getting off my motorcycle. I pulled it out, and I feel this little feeling that comes on me. And then I looked, and the key was bent. And then I started bending spoons, and it really became really noticeable when I had a spoon that was not made of like steel or anything else that was able to be bent. It was made out of pot metal, and it just broke. And at that time, I realized that this thing was getting out of hand. What can I do with this ability?
What's your question?
What can I do with this ability besides?
Okay, let me explain. I think we all remember the famous Arthur C. Clarke movie 2001: Space Odyssey.
Classic, yes.
Unbelievable film. That's my favorite film of all time. Believe it or not, Stephen, I bent Arthur C. Clarke's key, his house key, and Arthur C. Clarke was arrested breaking into his own house. He was climbing up onto the window to get into his own house because he couldn't use the bent key. So for decades, Stephen, I thought that I was bending spoons and forks and keys through my television shows in people's homes. I was also fixing broken watches. I really thought that it was my energy that was penetrating through the camera into people's homes, into their living rooms. But I was wrong. How did I discover that I was wrong? Dr. Thelma Moss from UCLA, she filmed a group of students while I was bending spoons and fixing broken watches in the university, UCLA. But I didn't know that it was a secret film. And when I went back to New York, she played that videotape 2 weeks later to a new group of students, and lo and behold, just for my videotape, spoons and keys were bending.
Open lines begin next hour here on Coast to Coast, so get ready for that. And we're going to come back in a moment with Uri Geller and take phone calls as we continue talking about his incredible career. What an amazing person. I remember seeing him on Janet Carson in 1973, and like he said, he was felt like he was destroyed, but it turned his career around. It really did. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Let's go wrap up with Steve, the Albany cab driver. Steve, this is a gift that you've been able to do for all these years.
Yeah, I when I first did it, I was visiting a marriage counselor, and I went into his office, and I said, I just bent the key to my motorcycle. And then sometime after that, I started bending spoons. I just kept bending spoons and all sorts of flatware, and I became really frustrated with it.
Well, that's amazing. Let's go back to Uri Geller. Uri, we're wrapping things up with Steve, the cab driver in New York, who's got some spoon bending abilities, and he doesn't know what to do with it.
May I answer the question now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I learned many years ago that it wasn't my energy that was bending spoons in people's homes. What I was doing, I became a catalyst. I was a trigger. I was an enabler to awaken the minds of people who actually had this dormant energy within them. And as a matter of fact, on my website, on urigeller.com, I actually have the Geller effect. It's a program where I teach people how to develop your own limitless psychic potential using easy-to-follow practices that anyone can master. Now, spoon, are we still on?
Yeah.
So spoon bending is, I mean, I've heard this type of stories like you're telling me now, not hundreds of times, thousands of times. I would suggest that you forget spoon bending, but this shows me that you're intuitive. You have certain psychic abilities. Start using for your own benefit. Believe in yourself. Start visualizing, creating your target goals, and just become, successful through your psychic powers. I am a total believer that the power of the mind can manifest anything. There is nothing that you cannot be, do, or have, because you are the architect of your own life. Anyhow, thanks for the call.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go to Joe in the Bronx in New York. Joe, you're on with Uri Geller. Go ahead.
Hey, George, how are you?
Okay.
Good. Uri, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'd like to ask the following question, Uri. You sent a letter to Putin regarding his threats of using nuclear weapons. Do you expect, or do you hold the expectation of receiving a response from Mr. Putin?
Well, first of all, I know for a fact that he received the letter.
He did get it.
Israel is full with Russians. There are lots of oligarchs here who are connected to the Kremlin, to Putin. Look, Russians are very superstitious. I know this. I own a museum in Old Jaffa, and I'm visited by thousands of Russians who come from all over Israel and from Russia. And they believe, they're very open-minded. They believe in the powers of the mind. So I know that Putin took my open letter, I don't want to call it a threat, but he took it very seriously. And the fact is that he kind of backed down from the declarations of nuclear war and that he's going to activate a nuclear weapon and silos and so on. He ebbed away from that. I want to believe that it's part of our effort because I'm not doing this alone. I've asked people to help me, and we are doing it successfully. Now, whether I will get a tangible letter from Putin, I don't know. But, hey, I get information verbally from people who know him. And, yeah, he has absorbed and my warning to him.
Next up.
Thanks for your question.
Reb in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Reb, thanks for calling.
Yeah, this is U.S. Pentagon First Team Bubba Scout Reb. They know us all over the Pentagon, and our website, vulturesquadron.com, is at Cape Canaveral, Florida. That's who started it in 2000. I got a good question for you.
Okay.
How come you don't use your mind power to stop the chemical spraying that's ruining the planet and the ionospheric heating? Just for example, try to eat a pound of this snow and then tell us what you feel.
Oh, I don't think I want to do that. I don't know. What do you think of chemtrails, Uri?
Look, I'm just one human being. I'm not a miracle worker, and I'm not a prophet, and I'm not, I can't manifest everything at the same time. I do my bit for certain secret agencies, only positive missions. I am dealing with the Putin situation now, and on my list there are other things that I have to help. Look, our planet is not in the best and healthiest situation. Look at as we speak now, ice caps are melting. There is global warming. There are thousands and thousands of nuclear weapons ready to be fired off from submarines, silos, and airplanes. Look at the medical arena. Yes, we have advanced tremendously, but hey, we still are struggling to cure cancer. I mean, if you look at all this in the bigger scope of things, we've got to solve these problems. For instance, what if a meteorite or a comet will start coming in velocities that we can't really comprehend towards planet Earth? I mean, one big comet hitting our Earth, that's it. Forget it.
It's gone. Yep.
So we don't even have weapons yet to encounter, to stop, to explode these dangerous comets or meteorites that might hit Earth. So we are really, in a way, yes, we have advanced tremendously, and we've got internet, and we've got amazing medical discoveries and so on. But in the bigger picture, hey, we're really struggling. Do you realize that every 3 seconds, and listen to this carefully and absorb it, every 3 seconds a baby dies from hunger somewhere around the world? Hey,
jeez,
wake up, Earth. This is why when people ask me, what do we do? How can we help? I, first of all, talk to the individual people. I tell them, look, first of all, if you can go there with your mind, you can go there with your body. Whatever you can visualize, you can materialize. There's nothing that you cannot be, do, or have. When you wake up tomorrow morning, put yourself in an attitude of gratitude. Start thinking positive. Activate your mind power. Again, my website will help you a lot. Just go to urigeller.com. You'll find a lot of free material on my website. And believe in yourself. Be positive. Become a positive thinker. Put yourself in a mental positive attitude, and then things will start changing for you.
Let's go next to Dave in Tacoma, Washington, west of the Rockies. David, go ahead.
Oh, hello, Yuri. Will you please discuss the recent predictions of alien invasion?
All right, I will tell you exactly. This is a brilliant question. I have been quoted through lots of newspapers, radios, etc., and even TV stations saying, "Oh, Mr. Geller, Uri Geller has just announced that there will be an alien invasion." Well, that is not true. I never, ever used the word invasion. If there will be and when, let's make it clear that it's when there will be an encounter, it's going to be positive. Aliens are not going to invade planet Earth and destroy us, and I'll tell you why. Because if they were hostile, and if they did want to destroy us, we would have been destroyed a long time ago. On the contrary, they want to save our planet. So forget the word invasion. It's nothing to do with me. But thank you very much for bringing this question up.
I would guess we're our worst enemies, not the aliens, Uri.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised, and I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, look at this. We are still fighting, and we're still killing each other in the name of religion. And, you know, the energy, the aliens, theological, the theological community calls it God. The scientific community calls it energy. It's the same description, different terminology. I'm a huge believer in the power of prayer. I believe in God. I believe that above us, in infinite spaces out there, there is the Creator. And also concerning our mind, and once more again, my website is urigeller.com. You can become one of my Academy members. Definitely you can become, for $1, my citizen of my Lamb Island, which all goes to charity to help sick children. There is a very powerful sentence, and it says, the last frontier is not space. It is the mind. Because we have not discovered, we've just discovered a fraction of our human potential. It is amazing what we will be doing 200, 300, 400 years from now. I just hope that we will go to the right direction. And I think, George, you believe that too.
Absolutely, Uri. And I want to thank you again for being on the program. You're one of our favorites. Stay safe and keep in touch with us, okay?
Bless you all, and I love you all.
Uri Geller. Folks, his website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com.
The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.